Day 79 of the Atlantic hurricane season, day 97 in the Eastern Pacific, where we currently have a storm that's just about to cross over into the Western Pacific. Tropical storm Pewa, which is currently moving towards the west-northwest. 65 miles per hour makes it the strongest storm in the world at the moment. We also have a few invests, 92L in the Atlantic, still in the southern Gulf of Mexico. Tropical storm Erin as well, which is currently hanging on to minimal tropical storm status. And two new depressions in the Western Pacific, at least one of which is likely to develop into a tropical storm. That will be 12W over the next few days. You can see them interacting slightly as well, fairly close to each other. Uto, the remnants of that, is still going over inland China. Probably lots of rain being produced there. And 90C as well, which is still progressing towards the west, quite close to Pewa as well, in terms of distance between the storms. In the Atlantic, you can see 92L there now with a medium chance of development. As of the upload time, it was at 30%. And Erin, which is barely holding on to tropical storm status as it moves towards the northwest, isn't likely to hold on for very long. The Indian Ocean remains fairly quiet at the moment, not too much going on here, not too much in terms of any development, as is normal for this time of year. You'll probably see things warming up a little bit, especially in the southern Indian Ocean in October to November, and in the northern Indian Ocean as well. The sea surface temperatures then, first of all for the eastern half of the Pacific, you can see very warm water as well, fairly warm waters in the central region where those two systems are at the moment, around 27-28 degrees. Close to the Mexican coastline where we may see our next storm, warmer waters here, 28 to 30 degrees, warmer closer to the coast. In the Atlantic, you can see the western half of the Gulf of Mexico is the warmest region of the Atlantic at the moment, around 28 to 30 degrees, maybe even more than that, near the Mexican coast, and that's where 92L is at the moment. So no issues with sea surface temperatures, but other factors are conspiring against it slightly at the moment. As for Erin, waters are fairly warm here, 27 degrees at a minimum probably. Certainly warm enough to sustain a tropical storm. The Western Pacific as well remaining warm here, where those two systems are at the moment. Both those temperatures are around 28 to 30 degrees in terms of sea surface temperatures, which is certainly warm enough to sustain a tropical storm, or indeed more than that, a typhoon. Tropical storm Erin there, 40 miles per hour winds, pressures 1006 millibars, a very weak system at the moment, positions 20.6 degrees north, 36.4 degrees west as of the last update from the National Hurricane Center at 9 PM UTC. And the storm's expected to move towards the west-northwest, maybe more towards the northwest, but weakening is the trend for the next few days into a tropical depression. Will probably persist for a little while before turning post-tropical and maybe intensifying slightly as well as an extratropical cyclone as it moves towards the northwest and recurves towards the pole, and then maybe towards the northeast as well as an extratropical cyclone. Invest 92LM currently with winds of 30 miles per hour, pressures 1010 millibars, positions 20.8 degrees north, 93.2 degrees west, and it's staying fairly south at the moment, fairly close to land areas, which is inhibiting any development. But the models currently are fairly in consensus with a tropical storm forming, though that is becoming less likely at this time. And the models are shifting southwards as well, looking more towards the landfall in Mexico than in the United States, but southern Texas in particular should still be watching the progress of this storm 92L as it moves towards the northwest. Tropical storm Pewa then, which is currently just off the screen there. This is the Western Pacific map, so it's just about to move into this region, and the forecast track shows it becoming a Category 1 typhoon as it heads towards the general northwestward direction, and will probably pass close, not too far away from Wake Island as a Category 1 typhoon, which could cause some adverse effects over there. And but apart from Wake Island, there won't be any land areas under the gun from this storm, under the track forecast in the next 5 days. You can see a general straight direction as a Category 1 storm over the next 5 days. Tropical Depression 12 then, which is just to the southeast of Taiwan and the Japanese Ryukyu Islands, expected to move towards the east initially, and then curve towards the north, and then towards the northwest, and possibly move over the Japanese Miyako and Yayama Islands, and then brush Taiwan, and then move into China perhaps in 4 or 5 days' time. The two models, the GFS and the CMC, are fairly split on what happens as a result with this storm, as they have been for quite a while. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with this system. Current winds 35 miles per hour, pressures 998 millibars, positions 20.2 degrees north, 126.5 degrees east. Let's take a look at the shear maps then. You can see this is the Atlantic first of all. The tropical storm symbol is Erin. You can see some strong shear towards the northwest of that storm where the storm is expected to go, and slightly increasing as well, which will probably finish off Erin, and indeed what's left of it will move towards the northwest. As for the Invest 92L, conditions becoming slightly less favourable, but still not too bad for any development there. You can see the other tropical storm symbol is Pewa there in the very far western part of the eastern Pacific. You can see some strong shear levels just to the north of that storm, but it might be decreasing over the next 24 hours or so, and giving way to more favourable conditions for this storm to intensify into a Category 1 typhoon. Now you can see these low pressure systems in the western Pacific that under fairly low shear environments, just a little pocket of shear that's increasing just to the southeast of Okinawa Island, but not too much in terms of strong shear which will affect these storms, but strengthening may be fairly limited, and indeed the forecast currently calls for a tropical storm and nothing more yet. So this is the humidity, the water vapour for the Atlantic. You can see a large area of dry air just to the northwest of Erin, and Erin's finding it increasingly difficult to sustain itself as a result. This is the Pacific as well. You can see some dry air here, especially over the central part of the eastern Pacific, in the middle latitudes just north of the tropics. As for Pewa, not too much difficulties in terms of hostile air, in terms of dry air in the area. Certainly moist conditions, as you can see here in the western Pacific as well, as always. Very moist conditions around the whole basin at the moment. The two depressions you can see there with the pink and blue zones were showing intense rainfall. Not too much in terms of dry air around these areas either, and certainly fairly conducive conditions to that effect. So this is the western Pacific in the past 24 hours. You can see all three systems, what's left of Utor still inland over China, and the two systems which have been circling around each other at the moment. Invest Tropical Depression 13W to the northwest of Okinawa, and 12 to the south of the Japanese islands as well. This is the latest floater imagery then of Erin. You can see it's not managing to produce much in terms of heavy rainfall and thunderstorm activity now. Just a few flare-ups in the very centre of the storm, trying to give out a last hurrah, I suppose you could say, before it weakens into a depression. I suspect a remnant low will be following not too long from now. This is Tropical Storm Pewa, which currently has some ambitions for typhoon status in the western Pacific. You can see perhaps the circulation has been tightening in the past few hours on that floater there, looking at those frames. That's just my interpretation. Certainly appears to be strengthening, and indeed it has been, from 50 miles per hour to 65 in the past 24 hours or so. And Invest 92L, which is currently still going in the southern Gulf of Mexico, just in between Mexico now and the Yucatan Peninsula, and the storm has not really been intensifying that much. You can see not too much development or organisation, and rightfully so, remaining a 30% chance of development, and that could well drop over the next 24 hours as well. The CMC model then, it predicts a weak tropical storm to make landfall in Mexico, northern Mexico. As for Erin moving out to sea, and another system making landfall in Louisiana as well very soon. I'm not seeing that happening at the moment. As for the eastern Pacific, two systems, quite strong ones as well, maybe hurricane strength on both of those, but not affecting land. The ECMWF, however, does predict a tropical storm or hurricane in the eastern Pacific that does affect the Baja California Peninsula. It's been fairly consistent with that one for a few days now, and I believe it predicts a tropical wave moving through the Caribbean as well, moving through the central Atlantic, but does not develop it. The GFS model takes Erin out to sea, of course. As for 92L, it does have a weak system moving into Louisiana, probably not tropical, and 92L itself moving into Mexico is a very weak system, with a tropical storm forming in the eastern Pacific as well. The NavGem model also has a storm forming in the eastern Pacific. As for Erin, moving out to sea, actually moving further south than the models show at the moment, with most of the other models show at the moment, so that's rather intriguing. The GFDL model, this is for Pewa, currently predicting it to become a stronger Category 3 storm with at least 125 mph winds as it moves out to sea in the western Pacific towards the northwest, and then curving towards the north as a Category 3 typhoon, maybe even Cat 4. And the HWRF model predicts another system forming behind Erin, moving through the Cape Verde Islands and then out to sea in the central Atlantic, possibly as a tropical storm. We'll certainly keep an eye on that one. So this is the intensity comparisons. This is for Invest 92. Now you can see the models here backing off slightly with its intensity. Only a weak tropical storm, most of them say. There is one outlier, the HWRF still predicting a strong storm becoming a hurricane, but that I believe is slightly out of date, so that is probably invalid now. But you can see here the two models, the red line and the green one. I'm not sure which ones they are now, the GFDL and GFS I believe, moving it into northern Mexico. The shear comparisons for these ones as well, you can see it rising slightly over the next few days, and gradually becoming more moderate and maybe even high shear by the end of the forecast period, and the storm will be no more. The sea surface temperatures, as always, not much to worry about here. We are in the western Gulf of Mexico, so very warm waters here, 29 degrees at a minimum I'd say, and the relative humidity comparisons are not looking too bad, around 50%. It will bottom out at on the 19th of August, which is marginally favourable for development over the next few days, and then it will rise a little bit after that as well. The CMC model for the Western Pacific then has that typhoon forming, that's 12W moving through the Japanese islands and then into China as a strong storm, with another system forming to its east as well, which is unrelated to Pewa, which you can see at the very far right of your screen there as a typhoon. The GFS model also has 12W forming and moving through the Japanese islands and then curving, having a change of mind around Taiwan, stalling off the Taiwanese coast and then moving past China, brushing China, and then affecting Japan and South Korea, probably just Japan as a matter of fact, affecting the southern coast there as it moves out to sea as a tropical system, possibly a typhoon. So the overall predicted season scores then for August the 18th remain unchanged for the time being on yesterday. Hockeyman 10 Minecraft remains in first place with 60 points. Joint second at the moment is William with 59 and also Willieback 82, both with 59 points at the moment. In fourth place, Hurricane Barbara and BFDIA Submission 2 joint fourth at 54 points. And you can submit your own storm totals at the website force13.com/interactive.html and then just click the 2013 Predictor Season button and submit how many storms you believe will form in each Northern Hemisphere basin. So what happened today on August the 18th? Well, in 1969, Camille peaked as a Category 5 hurricane with winds of 190 miles per hour and a pressure of 905 millibars, and then it went on to make landfall in Mississippi on the same day, resulting in 259 fatalities and $1.5 billion in damages. In 1971, Tropical Storm Chloe formed near the Lesser Antilles, and in 1973, Tropical Storm Brenda formed near the Yucatan Peninsula. There it is pictured in a fairly similar place to 92L at the moment. In 1975, Tropical Storm Ilsa formed in the Eastern Pacific. The next year, Tropical Storms Candice and Dottie formed in the Atlantic. I believe that's Candice forming there. In 1978, Tropical Storms John and Christy both formed in the Eastern Pacific. And in 1983, Alicia made landfall in Texas, resulting in 22 fatalities and $2 billion in damages. A very tight, compact Category 3 storm making landfall in Texas there. In 1987, Tropical Storm Brett formed near the Cape Verde Islands. In 1989, Tropical Storm Erin formed in a similar location. In 1992, Tropical Storm K formed in the Eastern Pacific. And in 1997, Typhoon Winnie made landfall in China, as I believe a Category 1 typhoon, maybe a Cat 2, I can't remember now, resulting in 212 fatalities and $4.1 billion in damages. There's K pictured in the Eastern Pacific with the Baja California Peninsula to the far right. In 1998, Tropical Storm Bonnie formed in the Central Atlantic. The next year, Tropical Storm Brett formed in the southern Gulf of Mexico. In 2002, Tropical Storm Vong Fong formed in the Western Pacific. There it is pictured. In 2004, Tropical Storm Chaba formed in the Western Pacific as well. In 2007, Dean reached Category 5 strength in the Eastern Caribbean, pictured there. And in 2008, Tropical Storm Faye made landfall in Key West. And you can track any storm that forms at the website, including the active ones at the moment, force13.com/stormtracking.html. That's the main page for it, where you can track all the current active named storms and invests as they go about, with the tables at the bottom showing their intensities and the warnings as well, which may come into effect at any time, but no warnings at the moment, tropical cyclone related at least, anywhere in the world. As soon as we know about it, you'll know about it, I suppose. You can also visit the website in between bulletins as well, because that's where the most up-to-date information will be at any one time in between the bulletin videos, so I highly advise you to check that out. And you can also visit the social pages as well, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Force 13 is on all three of those mediums. Just search us on either of those. You can find us fairly easily enough. And please do show your support by doing the usual liking, subscribing, commenting, favouriting, following, and indeed anything else that you may be able to do on these social networking pages and YouTube as well. And if you have any comments that you can, if you want to comment on any of these videos, please do so under the video itself on YouTube, or by private message if you have any questions or queries. I'm all ears and I'll reply to you fairly quickly. And it's 99 days until Hurricane Week 2013, down to 2 digits. Visit the page for more information, force13.com/hw2013.html. We are looking for collaborators and contributions for the project. It's a fairly big project as well. It's certainly my biggest undertaking, and it's certainly going to be a fairly interesting event. It'll be 6 days long at the end of November, and it'll be 6 days of long videos. I know that last year it accumulated to around 2.5 hours of content, and it's going to be even more this time around. You can also visit the forum, which is online, force13.com/forum. That's for any discussion that you may have about the current or past storms, or indeed anything else storm related. The next bulletin will be coming up at around midnight UTC on the morning of the 19th of August. That's Sunday. But until then, that's all for now.